The auction room reeked of cigar smoke and desperation. Miss Clara Hartwell stood on the platform in the back room of Debtor's Court, her spine rigid despite the humiliation burning through her. Around her, gentlemen in expensive coats examined her like livestock, checking everything except her teeth. Miss Clara Hartwell, aged 25, the auctioneer announced. Educated, literate in English and French, sold by her father to settle gambling debts of £300, 5-year contract as lady's companion. 5 years. Clara's hands trembled. 5 years of her life traded for her father's weakness. She's past her prime, someone called out. What use is a companion nearly on the shelf? She's got spirit, though, another man leered. I'd pay to tame that tongue. Clara knew what happened to women bought by certain men. The word companion was just prettier than the truth. Who'll start at £500? Every head turned. A man stepped from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed entirely in black. Dark hair silvered at the temples. A jagged scar ran from eyebrow to cheekbone, but it was his eyes that made Clara's breath catch. Winter storm gray, cold as death itself. 500, he repeated, his voice like a blade on stone, and I'll hear no other bids. I am the Duke of Ashford. Name your price and end this. The Duke of Ashford, wealthiest man in England, widower, reclusive. His wife had died under circumstances no one discussed. 10 minutes later, Clara sat in his carriage, watching the massive stone fortress of Ashford Manor loom through the mist. "Why did you buy me?" she finally asked. He studied her with those dead gray eyes. "Because I need someone strong enough to survive my household, Miss Hartwell. The last 3 companions fled within weeks." Fled from what? His smile was terrible. From the ghosts. The carriage rolled through iron gates. Ashford Manor arose before them, all dark stone and darker windows. No light shone from within. It looked exactly like what it was, a tomb. "Welcome," the Duke said as the carriage stopped, "to your prison." Clara's stomach knotted, but as she stepped onto the gravel drive, she made herself a vow. I will survive this. I will not become another ghost in this house of shadows, even if the Duke was already measuring her for a shroud. 3 companions fled in terror. Clara's contract binds her for 5 years. What horrors lurk in Ashford Manor, and why does the Duke's dead wife's portrait seem to watch from every wall? Hit that like button if you're already hooked. Comment, would you survive in a haunted manor with a scarred Duke and his traumatized daughter, or would you be companion number 4 running for the hills? Tell me below.
The entrance hall of Ashford Manor was cavernous and cold. A grand staircase swept upward into shadows, portraits of stern-faced ancestors lining the walls. Every surface gleamed with obsessive care, yet the house felt unlived in, a museum, not a home. A woman in severe black appeared from a side corridor, tall, rail-thin, with iron-gray hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her face. Her eyes raked over Claire with unconcealed disdain. "Mrs. Brennan," the Duke said curtly, "this is Miss Hartwell. She will be attending to Lady Catherine and overseeing Miss Lily's education. Prepare the Rose Room." "The Rose Room, Your Grace?" Mrs. Brennan's tone dripped with disapproval. "That's quite close to the family quarters. Surely the servants' wing." "The Rose Room," the Duke repeated. His voice dropped 20 degrees. "Miss Hartwell is not a scullery maid, Mrs. Brennan. She will be treated as a member of the household staff befitting her education and responsibilities." The housekeeper's lips pressed into a bloodless line. "As you wish, Your Grace." She turned to Clara. "Follow me. Your duties begin at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Lady Catherine breakfasts at 7. Miss Lily takes lessons from 9 until noon. You will have Sundays off, provided your work is satisfactory." Her eyes said it never would be. "The East Wing is forbidden. His Grace's late wife's rooms are not to be disturbed under any circumstances. And you will maintain proper distance from His Grace at all times. We've had complications with previous companions who forgot their place. Clara's cheeks burned, but she kept her expression neutral. I assure you, Mrs. Brennan, I have no designs on his grace. I'm here to work, nothing more. See that you remember that. Mrs. Brennan started up the stairs. Girls bought at auction have ideas above their station. They never last. As they climbed, Clara glimpsed a small face peering through the railings of the second-floor landing. A child, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, with dark curls and enormous blue eyes. She wore a black dress despite the warmth of late summer, morning clothes. The child stared at Clara with unsettling intensity. Then slowly she pressed a finger to her lips. Shh. Before Clara could respond, the child vanished like smoke. That would be Miss Lily, the housekeeper said coldly. His Grace's daughter. She doesn't speak, hasn't uttered a word since her mother died. The doctors say it's psychological. I say it's willful disobedience. You'll find her challenging. Clara's heart squeezed. A motherless child locked in silence. When did the Duchess die? Clara asked. 3 years this October. Terrible tragedy. We don't speak of it. Mrs. Brennan stopped at a door and pushed it open. The Rose Room. Dinner is at 7 in the servants' hall. Do not be late. The room was surprisingly pleasant. Pale pink walls, a 4-poster bed with embroidered linens, a writing desk by the window. Through the glass, Clara could see the manor's extensive grounds, manicured gardens giving way to wild forest. But what caught her attention was the doll sitting on the bed. A beautiful porcelain doll with dark curls and a black velvet dress. A piece of paper was pinned to its chest. Clara picked up the doll, unfolded the paper. In a child's careful handwriting, the last one cried every night, "Will you cry too?" Clara looked up at the window. In the reflection, she saw Lily standing in the doorway, watching her with those unnervingly old eyes. No, Clara said aloud, setting the doll gently on the nightstand. Not anymore. Lily's head tilted. She stepped into the room, moving with eerie silence. She held up a slate chalkboard with words already written. Why not? Clara knelt down to the child's eye level. Because crying doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring back people we've lost. It doesn't fix what's broken. So I decided to stop wasting tears and start fixing things instead. Lily studied her for a long moment. Then she erased the slate and wrote again. Can you fix this house? The question struck Clara like a physical blow. This child, trapped in silence, was asking if Clara could bring life back to this tomb. Could she? I don't know, Clara said honestly, but I can try. Will you help me? Lily's eyes, her father's eyes, Clara realized, widened. Then slowly she nodded. It was the beginning of something. Clara didn't know what, but as Lily slipped out of the room as silently she'd entered, Clara felt the first flutter of purpose. She might be bought property, bound by contract to this house, but perhaps, just perhaps, she could do more than survive her sentence. Perhaps she could actually matter. Clara met Lady Catherine the next morning and immediately understood why the Duke had been so desperate for a companion. The woman who greeted her in the morning room was nothing like the delicate invalid Clara had imagined. Catherine Ashford was perhaps 30, with auburn hair, intelligent hazel eyes, and a sharp wit that sparkled in every word. She was also confined to a wheelchair, her legs covered by a thick blanket despite the summer warmth. So, you're the latest sacrifice, Catherine said without preamble, gesturing for Clara to sit. Please sit down before you give yourself a crick in the neck from being proper. I have enough people bowing and scraping around here. Clara sat, surprised. Your brother said you required constant care. My brother, Catherine said with obvious affection and exasperation, is overprotective to the point of absurdity. I broke my back in a riding accident 5 years ago. I cannot walk, but I can read, write, manage the household accounts, play chess, and argue philosophy with anyone foolish enough to engage me. She poured tea with steady hands. What I cannot do is convince my brother that I am made of glass. Then why did she hire me? Clara asked bluntly. Catherine's smile was knowing. Because Sebastian needs to feel useful. Because guilt drives him like a whip, and caring for me gives him purpose. And because... She paused, studying Clara carefully. Because he's drowning and he doesn't know how to ask for help, so he hires companions and tells himself they're for me, when really they're meant to breathe life into this mausoleum. Clara's chest tightened. The housekeeper said previous companions didn't last. Oh, they ran screaming within weeks. Miss Adams lasted 3 weeks before she claimed the house was haunted. Miss Thornton made it 2 months before she couldn't bear the oppressive atmosphere anymore. And Miss Gray— Catherine's expression darkened. Miss Gray tried to seduce my brother, thinking a widowed duke was easy prey. He dismissed her immediately. He's been even more distant since then. I assure you, Mrs. Brennan, I have no designs on his grace. I'm here to work, nothing more. Honesty. Catherine looked almost pleased. That's refreshing. The others all pretended they wanted to be here, that it was some grand adventure. But you're a prisoner who admits her chains. Let me give you advice, Clara. May I call you Clara? Please. My brother is not cruel. He's not cold, despite appearances. He's wounded. When Rosalind died, his wife, something broke inside him. He turned Ashford Manor into a shrine to grief. He barely speaks to Lily because looking at her hurts so much. She has her mother's eyes, you see. Clara thought of the silent child. That's why she doesn't speak. The doctors say trauma. I say it's willful disobedience. You'll find her challenging. Clara's heart squeezed. A motherless child locked in silence. When did the Duchess die? Clara asked. 3 years this October. Terrible tragedy. We don't speak of it. Mrs. Brennan stopped at a door and pushed it open. The Rose Room. Dinner is at 7 in the servants' hall. Do not be late. The room was surprisingly pleasant. Pale pink walls, a 4-poster bed with embroidered linens, a writing desk by the window. Through the glass, Clara could see the manor's extensive grounds, manicured gardens giving way to wild forest. But what caught her attention was the doll sitting on the bed. A beautiful porcelain doll with dark curls and a black velvet dress. A piece of paper was pinned to its chest. Clara picked up the doll, unfolded the paper. In a child's careful handwriting, the last one cried every night, "Will you cry too?" Clara looked up at the window. In the reflection, she saw Lily standing in the doorway, watching her with those unnervingly old eyes. No, Clara said aloud, setting the doll gently on the nightstand. Not anymore. Lily's head tilted. She stepped into the room, moving with eerie silence. She held up a slate chalkboard with words already written. Why not? Clara knelt down to the child's eye level. Because crying doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring back people we've lost. It doesn't fix what's broken. So I decided to stop wasting tears and start fixing things instead. Lily studied her for a long moment. Then she erased the slate and wrote again, "Can you fix this house?" The question struck Clara like a physical blow. This child, trapped in silence, was asking if Clara could bring life back to this tomb. Could she? I don't know, Clara said honestly, but I can try. Will you help me? Lily's eyes, her father's eyes, Clara realized, widened. Then slowly she nodded. It was the beginning of something. Clara didn't know what, but as Lily slipped out of the room as silently she'd entered, Clara felt the first flutter of purpose. She might be bought property, bound by contract to this house, but perhaps, just perhaps, she could do more than survive her sentence. Perhaps she could actually matter. Clara met Lady Catherine the next morning and immediately understood why the Duke had been so desperate for a companion. The woman who greeted her in the morning room was nothing like the delicate invalid Clara had imagined. Catherine Ashford was perhaps 30, with auburn hair, intelligent hazel eyes, and a sharp wit that sparkled in every word.
Clara studied the portrait the Duke was staring at. A woman in white, ethereally beautiful. Pale blonde hair, delicate features, blue eyes that seemed to look through the viewer rather than at them. The late Duchess Rosalind. She looked like a fairy tale princess, fragile and otherworldly. She looked nothing like Clara. I believe in grief, Your Grace, Clara said carefully, which can haunt as surely as any spirit. The Duke finally turned. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, his cravat slightly loosened as if he'd been pulling at it. A glass of amber liquid sat on the desk behind him. It was barely past noon. My daughter visited you last night. he said abruptly. Mrs. Brennan reported it. Of course she did. Yes, Your Grace. She left me a doll and a note. She was testing me, I think. Testing you? To see if I would break like the others. Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps. And will you break? Clara met his gaze directly. No, Your Grace. I've already been broken once. It didn't kill me. I have no intention of letting your household finish the job. He blinked, clearly not expecting such bluntness. You are forthright. I'm honest. There's a difference. Honesty means speaking truth even when it's uncomfortable. Forthright suggests I enjoy making people uncomfortable. I don't, but I won't lie to make things easier either. The Duke walked to the desk, refilled his glass. My sister likes you. She told me this morning that you're refreshingly unfragile. High praise from Catherine. Lady Catherine is remarkable. She deserves to be treated as such, not as an invalid requiring constant supervision. She cannot walk. Her legs don't work. Her mind is brilliant. There's a difference. Clara took a breath, steadying herself. Your Grace, may I ask why you summoned me? If it's to dismiss me for speaking to your daughter, I'll pack my things. But if it's for another reason, I'd appreciate clarity. I have duties to attend to. The Duke stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. You're not afraid of me. Should I be? Most people are. I'm the Duke of Ashford. I control fortunes, ruin reputations with a word, hold power over life and livelihood. You also, Your Grace, bought me at auction. So no, Your Grace, I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of what 5 years in this house might do to me if I allow the cold to seep in. But you, personally, you're just a man who's forgotten to live. That's sad, not frightening. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. The Duke stared at the broken crystal, amber liquid spreading across the Persian rug. My wife killed herself, he said, his voice hollow, 3 years ago, in the East Wing. She hanged herself while I was in London on business. Lily found her. Clara's breath caught. The silent daughter, the forbidden wing, the ghosts that haunted this house suddenly took horrible concrete shape. Your Grace, don't. He held up a hand. Don't offer sympathy. Don't tell me it wasn't my fault. Don't. His voice cracked. Everyone says the same useless things. Rosalind was troubled. Rosalind was fragile. Rosalind needed more than I could give. As if speaking about her in the past tense makes her less dead. As if anything makes it bearable that my 8-year-old daughter found her mother swinging from a beam. Clara moved without thinking. She crossed the room, knelt by the broken glass, and began picking up the pieces. The Duke watched her, frozen. What are you doing? He asked. Cleaning up. Clara placed shards carefully in her palm. Because standing here staring at it won't make it whole again. Because sometimes the only thing to do with something broken is to clean it up and move forward. And because, Your Grace, you need someone in this house who won't flinch from the truth. She stood, walked to the waste bin, deposited the glass. Then she turned to face him. Your wife is dead. Your daughter is traumatized. Your sister is suffocating under your overprotection. And you've turned this house into a tomb because you believe suffering is penance. But suffering isn't penance, Your Grace. It's just suffering. And all you're doing is ensuring that everyone around you suffers too. The Duke's face had gone white. How dare you? You hired me, Your Grace, to take care of your household, to tend to your sister and daughter. But the person who needs tending most is you. And since I'm bound to this house for 5 years, since I have no choice but to be here, I'm going to speak the truth whether you like it or not. This has to stop. The shrine, the silence, the suffocating grief. It's killing what's left of your family. Get out. His voice was barely a whisper. Get out of my library. Clara curtsied stiffly. As you wish, Your Grace. She walked to the door, then paused. But when you're ready, Your Grace, when you're tired of drowning, I'll be here. Not because I want to save you, but because saving you might be the only way to save your daughter. She left before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, her heart racing. She'd just committed career suicide, insulted a duke to his face, potentially destroyed any chance of... That was magnificent. Clara jumped. Lady Catherine sat in her wheelchair at the end of the corridor, a satisfied smile on her face. You heard? The whole house heard. Sebastian hasn't raised his voice in 3 years. You just cracked the ice. Catherine wheeled closer. What happens next will determine everything. Either he'll dismiss you by morning or he'll finally start to thaw. Clara wasn't dismissed. That night she lay awake in the Rose Room expecting Mrs. Brennan to appear with orders to pack her bags. But morning came and with it something unprecedented. The Duke appeared at breakfast. He'd never attended family breakfast before, according to a shocked Catherine. Yet here he sat at the head of the table, silent but present, as Clara brought Lily down for her meal. The child froze when she saw her father. Her small hand tightened in Clara's. "Good morning, Lily," the Duke said stiffly. He looked at his daughter as if she were a fragile artifact that might shatter. "I trust you slept well." Lily didn't respond. She slid into her chair, keeping her eyes down. The silence was excruciating. Clara made a decision. She sat down next to Lily, closer to the Duke than was probably proper, and began serving the child her meal. "Lady Catherine was telling me about the gardens," she said conversationally, as if the tension weren't thick enough to cut. "She mentioned there's a rose garden that was your mother's favorite, Lily. Would you like to show it to me after lessons?" Lily's head came up. She looked at Clara, then at her father, then back at Clara. Slowly, she nodded. "The rose garden," the Duke said, his voice strained, "hasn't been maintained since Rosalind died. It's overgrown, wild." "Then we'll explore it like adventurers," Clara said. "Sometimes the wild places are the most interesting." She glanced at the Duke. "Don't you think, Your Grace?" Their eyes met. In that moment, Clara saw something shift in his expression, a crack in the armor. "Yes," he said quietly. "The wild places often hide the most truth." After breakfast, as Clara prepared Lily's lessons, Mrs. Brennan appeared. "His Grace wishes to see you in the garden at 3. "The garden?" "The rose garden." Mrs. Brennan's expression was unreadable. "He'll be waiting." At 3 o'clock, Clara made her way through overgrown paths to what had once been a magnificent rose garden. Now it was a tangle of thorns and wild growth, beautiful and brutal at once. The Duke stood in the center, a pruning tool in his hand. He'd removed his coat, rolled up his sleeves. It was the most informal Clara had ever seen him. "I haven't been here," he said without preamble, "in 3 years. I let it die because she loved it. It seemed fitting, somehow. Punishment." Clara stepped carefully through the brambles. "Punishing a garden doesn't bring anyone back." "I know." He turned to face her. "Miss Hartwell, Clara, I owe you an apology. What you said yesterday it was true, all of it. I have been drowning, and I've been pulling everyone down with me. So what changed between yesterday and today?" "My daughter," the Duke's voice cracked. "This morning, Lily brought me something. She hasn't approached me voluntarily in a year, but this morning she knocked on my study door and handed me her slate." "What did it say?" He pulled the slate from his coat pocket. In Lily's careful handwriting, "Please don't send Miss Clara away. She's the first person who talks to me like I'm not broken." Clara's throat tightened. "Oh, Lily." "My daughter thinks she's broken," the Duke said, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Because I've treated her like something damaged. Because I've been so consumed by my own guilt that I couldn't see her pain. You've been here 3 days, Clara, and you've done what I couldn't do in 3 years. You've made her feel seen." "She's not broken," Clara said fiercely. "She's grieving. There's a difference. And she's silent because in this house of ghosts, silence feels safer than speaking." "I know," he said, stepping closer, "and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to be the father she needs. I don't know how to stop the guilt from eating me alive. But I know that you're right. This has to stop. The shrine, the sepulchral grief, the prison I've built. It has to stop or I'll lose what's left of my family." "Then stop it," Clara said simply. "Choose to stop. It won't be easy, the grief won't disappear, but you can choose, every day, to take one step towards the living instead of the dead. And you'll help me?" The vulnerability in his voice was staggering. "I have no right to ask, I know. You're bound to this house by contract. I'm here because I have no choice about the contract, but what I do while I'm here, that's my choice, and I choose to help. Not because you bought me, but because Lily deserves a father who sees her. Because Lady Catherine deserves a brother who doesn't treat her like glass. Because this house deserves to be a home again." She took a breath. "And because you, Sebastian Ashford, deserve to stop punishing yourself for a tragedy you couldn't prevent." He stared at her. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. "Help me. Please." Clara took his hand. His grip was warm, strong, alive. "Let's start with this garden. We'll clear it together, make it beautiful again, not as a shrine to the past, but as a gift to the future." They worked side by side until sunset, clearing thorns and dead growth, finding the roses that still lived beneath the brambles. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. When Lily appeared at the garden gate, watching them silently, the Duke did something extraordinary. He knelt down in the dirt, opened his arms, and waited. And Lily, beautiful, broken, brave Lily, ran to her father and buried her face in his shoulder. Clara turned away, giving them privacy, but she heard it. The first sound from the child's mouth in 3 years. A sob, raw and real, the sound of grief finally finding its voice. Behind her, the Duke held his daughter and wept with her. It was a beginning, not a happy ending. Those took time, but a beginning. And sometimes, Clara thought, watching father and daughter cling to each other in a garden slowly coming back to life, a beginning was the bravest thing of all. The ice is finally cracking at Ashford Manor, but will the Duke's painful past destroy any chance of a future with Clara? And what happens when Lily finally finds her voice? Part 2 coming next. We're only halfway through this emotional journey. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the dramatic conclusion. Comment, what would you do if you were Clara? Stay and help with this broken family heal, or keep your distance to protect your heart? Let me know.